All right. So, it's like we're always trying to figure out like what's really going on, right? Like who's making the decisions that shape the world around us?
Yeah, absolutely. I think everyone has those moments where you sort of step back and you're like, wait a minute, what's really going on here?
Exactly. And today we're going to dive into something that kind of does that, like it makes you think about power and who has it.
It's one of those things that just jumps out at you.
Yeah. So we're talking about this upcoming presidential inauguration. And there are a few names on the guest list that are, well, raising some
It's
eyebrows.
not your typical lineup, that's for sure.
No, not at all. So think Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, Mark Zuckerberg.
Wow. The trifecta.
Right. We're talking about the wealthiest people on the planet. And they're expected to be like front and center at this major political event.
It's pretty striking when you think about it. They don't hold any official government positions.
Nope. Their power is, well, it's economic.
It's the power of big tech, the power of, Amazon basically runs our lives at this point.
It's true. So to see them basically rubbing shoulders with the people who are about to run the country, it's like, whoa, what does that mean?
Yeah, it makes you wonder about the relationship between wealth and political power. Like, how much influence does that kind of wealth buy you?
That's exactly what we're going to explore. And to help us unpack all of this, we've got some really interesting perspectives from this transcript from the Ring of Fire YouTube channel.
Yeah, Ring of Fire, they're pretty vocal about their views, so it should be an interesting deep dive.
Yeah, they definitely have a take on this whole situation. And just to be clear, we're here to lay out their arguments, not necessarily endorse them.
Right, we're just trying to understand their perspective and what it might tell us about this convergence of wealth and power.
So the first thing that jumps out from this transcript is that they think this whole thing is super unusual. Like, these guys aren't politicians, they're business titans. So why are they getting this kind of prime seating at a political event?
Yeah, it's a good question. Usually those front row seats are for, like, former presidents, senators, people who have a long history in government.
Right. So the fact that these tech giants are getting this kind of access, it's not the norm.
And the source we're looking at, they definitely have some ideas about why these individuals might be so eager to be there.
Yeah, and regulation's a big one, right?
Absolutely. Think about the scale of these companies. Tesla, Amazon, Meta, they're operating in a really complex regulatory environment.
Right. Antitrust laws, data privacy, all that stuff.
Exactly. And a new administration can mean big changes to those regulations.
The transcript even mentions like fears of FTC lawsuits, SEC scrutiny, antitrust actions, all that.
So it's not surprising that these guys might want to be close to the new power structure, maybe try to influence things a bit.
Yeah, maybe nudge things in a direction that's, shall we say, favorable to their business interests.
Right. It's all about access and visibility. Just being seen with the right people can be incredibly valuable.
Okay, but now here's where things get really interesting, because the source then starts talking about this whole idea of draining the swamp, right? Like, this was a big campaign promise.
Right. The idea of getting rid of the establishment, shaking things up.
Exactly. But the commentator in this transcript is basically saying, hang on a second. If this isn't the deep state, then what is?
It's a provocative point.
Right.
Like, if drain the swamp is about getting rid of entrenched interests, well, having the three richest people in the world right there in the front row doesn't exactly scream change.
Right. It's almost like they're saying that this is the deep state, just not the way we usually think about it.
Yeah, it's not some shadowy cabal of bureaucrats. It's this very public display of wealth and its proximity to power.
And they're not exactly shy about their opinion on this. They use some pretty strong language, even hinting at the idea of oligarchy.
It's a pretty critical interpretation, that's for sure. It suggests that our traditional understanding of the establishment might need a bit of an update.
Okay, but they don't stop there. They also dig into the motivations of, well, everyone involved. And their argument is basically that none of these players, the president-elect, Musk, Bezos, Zuckerberg, none of them are really looking out for the average person.
It's a pretty cynical view, but they back it up with some specific examples.
Yeah, like they point to Elon Musk and his decisions around content moderation on his social media platform.
Right, the changes to monetization, verification, all that. The source is basically saying that it's all about serving Musk's own interests, not promoting some greater good.
They also bring up Amazon and how they've handled unionization efforts,
Yeah, they paint that as another example of prioritizing profit over the well-being of workers.
And then there's Zuckerberg and Meta. They talk about the reduction in fact-checking, the spread of misinformation.
The argument is that those decisions are about appeasing certain user groups, boosting engagement, even if it means letting harmful content spread.
So the big takeaway from this transcript is that they don't see this whole inauguration thing as some kind of populist victory, you know? It's not about shaking up the system for the benefit of everyone.
Right. They see it as a consolidation of power among a very small, very wealthy elite.
And they're basically warning us that this isn't going to end well for most people.
The transcript even ends with this kind of ominous prediction, like the average person is going to get the short end of the stick and they might not even realize what hit them.
It's a pretty stark picture they're painting.
Yeah.
All right, so let's recap the main points from this Room of Fire transcript, because there's a lot there.
Yeah.
Okay, first, they really hammered home just how weird it is to see these three super rich guys at the inauguration, right? Like, they're not politicians. They're just really, really wealthy.
And they're right up there with the incoming cabinet members. It's definitely unusual.
Second, they argue that those guys are probably there to try to influence things, you know? Like, they're worried about regulations and lawsuits, so they want to be close to the people making the decisions.
Yeah, it's all about protecting their interests.
Third, they totally dismantle this whole draining the swamp narrative. Like, they're saying, look, if this isn't the deep state, then what is?
It's a good question. Like, maybe we need to rethink how we define the establishment.
Exactly. Fourth, they argue that this whole thing is about a small group of elites consolidating their power.
And that's not exactly a good thing for the rest of us.
Nope. And finally, they point to specific actions by Musk, Bezos, and Zuckerberg as evidence that they're not really motivated by, like, the public good.
Right. It's all about self-preservation
Yeah.
and expanding their own power.
Okay, so that's the perspective from Ring of Fire. And, you know, it's just one perspective. It's a pretty critical one, for sure.
Definitely.
Yeah.
But it raises some important questions, you know?
Yeah, like what happens when this much wealth gets this close to government?
Right. What kind of influence does that buy you? And how does that shape the decisions that get made?
And ultimately, how does that affect the rest of us?
And going back to that whole deep state idea, it makes you wonder, like, who really holds the power in our society? Is it elected officials? Or is it something else entirely?
Definitely something to think about.